Complex PTSD, an introduction. It all started the morning after that restless night in the space-age sleep clinic, where I lay cabled and wired with medical tape and monitors. Each breath, each heartbeat, each synapse recorded. My cerebral cortex, one of many, lighting up some distant observation room like a defective Christmas tree. In the morning, when it's over and I'm dressed, they call me into the office for the verdict. The doctor has wild Einstein hair. He's a genius. At least that's what my kind, resourceful GP tells me. She saw him speak at some conference, and now I'm here, wondering if this adventure will cure the insomnia that I am sure is the reason why I can't eat, can't sleep, why I can't stop myself from crying. I imagine the remedy will be that common but uncomfortable cure of having to wear a sleep apnea machine to bed forever. But no, the answer is not that simple. Instead, the diagnosis is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Apparently, there are parts of my brain that light up too much and others too little. When I leave the sleep clinic, I alternate between elation and confusion. At least I finally had an answer, even if the answer only led to more questions. I'd spent decades by this point in and out of therapy, my mind prodded by psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, life coaches, naturopaths, my psyche dissected by gurus, shamans, spirit guide sages, and past life regression experts. I assumed that eventually I'd be given some stigma-laden label like major depressive, borderline, or avoidant personality disorder. Before the sleep clinic, I was ready to accept anything. But I didn't see this coming, this strange, unknown oddity, the complicated cousin of PTSD. I imagined survivors of war or abduction, sex trafficking or slavery, but not me, a middle-aged woman who seemed to have led a relatively pedestrian life by comparison. But despite this appearance, early wounding, an emotional broken bone never properly set, kept me walking with a limp, scrambling to find my center, searching for an elusive sense of existential balance. And yes, it's hard, this business of being human. In this life, we will all suffer trials and tribulations, especially after the last few years, when COVID locked us all down in house arrest without warrant. We've all moved forward a bit more shaky these days, a lot less solid. But for some of us, life's traumas rock our systems off the Richter scale, and especially if it happens when we're young, when the people who are supposed to be able to trust abandon, abuse, or habitually belittle us, well then often our overwrought nervous systems just can't recover. Our brains get so hardwired for pain and disaster that a pandemic may as well be a picnic. It's nothing compared to the torture that an injured mind can conjure. Looking back, I wonder, did it start that summer out west when I lived with the burned-out hippies on the beach as a baby, vagabond child of a free love, flower power, drug-addled, way too young mother? Was it that time in the city, left alone in my crib all day long? I remember the dark, the desperation, the waiting, the fear, the hunger. Or maybe I don't remember it at all. It's so hard to file away ancient feelings made into memory before one has use of words. I know I don't remember being picked up at the beach by the children's aid worker. Don't remember the feeling of fire in my diaper, the infection, fever, malnourishment, and dehydration that landed me in the hospital. I don't remember the plane trip back to Toronto, to the only real sense of home I'd ever known, with my loving, devoted, safe haven grandparents. I do remember the police at the house years later, the word overdose sucking all the air out of the room, the cop breaking the news looking uncomfortable, and my grandmother gone limp, crumpled over in her chair, my grandfather broken, hunched over her. I remember the sick feeling in my belly as I watched the scene unfold, a nauseous anxiety that grew inside me like a mutant sea monkey into a wild, desperate, directionless anger. A feeling that everyone was lying about everything, even when no one ever spoke about it at all, and I mean ever. From there, the adventure of connection with other humans devolved. From childhood selective mutism as a grief response to standing alone in the middle of a playground, scratching my head, looking at the process of entering into a friendship like some impossible game of double dutch. It didn't help much that I was the only brown kid in my family or in my class or on my street, and got called the N-word on the regular, was picked on and beat up, haunted by an unspoken subtext. I wasn't like them. I was ever so slightly less than fully human. In grade 6, the popular girls told me that no white boy would ever date me, so I became content with being the black best friend in the movie, the sassy one with spunk and gumption, that girl with the great personality. Everyone knew better than to ask about my mom, and I was relieved. Had no language to explain why I didn't have parents like a normal kid, or why when she was alive my mother was always leaving, always saying goodbye, and why I was never enough to make her stay. I had no words to convey what was so wrong with me that made her that way. Apparently, these early circumstances and a collection of distressing memories devoid of nurturance, devoid of language, messed my wiring up from the get-go. Human attachment became a mystery. Synapses never learned how to reach out and say hello. All I know is that after back-to-back catastrophes decades later, I ended up feeling like my nervous system had been shredded. And when I finally emerged from the cocoon of the sleep clinic, prescription clutched in my fist like some sort of diploma of brokenness, I had the sense of finally understanding how what I once thought of as my quirky personality was really an attempt to achieve equilibrium through a collection of desperate emotional coping mechanisms. My career as a spoken word artist, a lifelong act of defiance, a radical overcompensation, a way to stop the pain of the past from bullying me into silence. Looking back, my pre-diagnosis life kind of seems like a hazy collage of chaotic, chopped up memories, a montage of TV show scenes I can barely remember. At the end of each episode, I was always left alone, the sole goldfish in the bowl, wondering, who made this beautiful castle? How did I get here? Where did everybody go? After my night in the sleep clinic, I fall down the rabbit hole of pop culture self-help, make best friends with Richard Grannon and Pete Walker. Dr. Ramani becomes the sister I haven't met, and Dr. Les Carter becomes the wise, gentle mentor I always wished I would have had. But when all the books and YouTube videos talk about cultivating a strong network of support, I balk, bunch my fists, and rage at them all. How can you prescribe supportive relationships with others when relationships with others is the impossible problem? When people are a puzzle with a crucial piece missing? A wild, unfathomable variable, an impossibly baffling and often irrationally cruel constellation. And to be honest, even when they're kind and compassionate, spending too much time with other humans often leaves me feeling drained, frayed, skinless, and unbalanced. Sharing this story doesn't help at all with the skinless bit, and I worry that this attempt at honesty might be misconstrued, might be seen as a way to pathologize the totality of my existence. Stigma is a snarling dog yapping at the heels of any form of mental unrest. as much as we try not to. It's easy to say, oh yes, that's why. It's easy to gaslight, dismiss, project with someone with a chronically shaky sense of safety and self. But there's not much I can do about others' opinions. I can only hope and pray that this project offers an invitation for all of us to look in the mirror and look at each other with honesty and kindness. Complex PTSD, they call it a disorder, as if our responses to trauma are the problem, when really it's the fact that we humans often treat each other terribly. And that mistreatment leaves scars on both the psyche and the body. As Dr. Bessel van de Kolk reminds us, the body keeps score. The emotional pain and physiological aftermath of trauma has led way too many into a despair so deep that giving up and checking out starts to look like the only remedy. So this is me saying, no, don't give up. There's hope. You are not alone. I've been there too. I know.